For staying with us. You're still watching TVC Breakfast Saturday. Now let's focus our next conversation on the issue of food security in Nigeria, especially at the aggregate and household levels. Of course, this issue of food security also includes access to adequate basic healthcare services and essential prerequisites for good nutrition. In Nigeria, with more than 200 million people, access to good and quality food has become challenging for many. With the rising costs of food items in the market, the food distribution system in Nigeria remains largely inefficient due to factors such as crop seasonality, inadequate storage technology and facilities, as well as inadequate transport, distribution system glitches, and inadequate market information. The concept of household food security ensures that households are able to obtain adequate food either through home production or through purchases. Joining us now is human security and supply chain expert Adebayo Adeleke. Thank you very much for joining us. Of course, Mr. Adeleke joins us from Abuja studio. We appreciate your time with us, Mr. Adeleke. So we have been speaking in the past couple of minutes about the 2025 budget presentation. And of course, the president has also spoken about the need to boost agriculture, though we haven't seen the exact details of what or how much essentially the agricultural sector will benefit from this latest budget proposal. But what is your assessment, and how hopeful are you that things will get better moving forward?
Good morning and compliment of the season to you all, and thank you for having me on this wonderful Saturday morning. I've listened to Mr. Saeed Ajadi, and it's quite interesting his take on the current budget. I've yet to actually sift through it to see exactly how the government allocates the future budget to food security. But I can tell you categorically that the posture towards food security in Nigeria is extremely poor. And this is due to lack of understanding of what food security is in the first place. I think what got us to where we are today is because we don't have a clear understanding of what food security is. Because oftentimes we've always equate food security to agriculture. Food security is not agriculture. Food security is not synonymous to agriculture. And that is where I believe that where's the bane of our problem actually starts for. Food security is where a citizen can afford quality and nutritious food anytime. That's period. Yes, agriculture is one of the main pillars of food security, but it's not all. I've said time and time again that 45% of what is considered in Nigerian food security can be attributed to agriculture. The rest of them are not agriculture at all. And I think that is where the problem lies. We cannot solve a problem we don't understand. That is why we stood up the Nigerian Food Security Project. We've been collecting data over the last year or so intensively in the last 6 months, understanding the dynamics between the formal and informal market. This issue of food security is an existential threat to the national security of Nigeria. And more importantly, for all forms of security that we have going on, food security is the bane of it all. Our health security, our physical security, our community security, economic security, energy security, everything is bane of food security. So it's a function of chicken and egg, which one comes first? And if we don't have this thing actually sort out, and that's why I'm actually eagerly looking forward to see how the government actually attributes some of these things to food security coming up. Because if we don't understand it, then how can we solve it?
All right, Mr. Adeleke, how can we solve it is the next question we should be talking about at this time. What are those adequate steps that need to be put in place to ensure food security in Nigeria? Because the ordinary man wants food on the table. When they cannot get it, it leads to something else. So profile some of those steps that can be put in place to ensure adequate food security in Nigeria.
Absolutely. This past week, we released the Nigerian Food Security Food Index, the first food security food index in the nation, and we'll be able to highlight the status of what the nation it is. And it's more or less, it's not an indictment on any form of government or not, because this particular situation didn't start this current administration. It's kind of over course of time. And what we've discovered over the course of this research and gathering information about the food security index is that first thing first, it's a demand and supply issue. And, the first question is how much nutritious and affordable food do we need for every citizen in Nigeria? And then can citizens actually afford it on the demand side? On the supply side is how much can we produce? And if we cannot produce, how much can we trade to actually get food production? So one of the things we found out, and I believe can be a quick win, is the fact that secondary storage. There are no secondary storage in Nigerian subnationals. Only the Nigerian government, federal government, has about 33 strategic grain reserves across the nation. And those strategic grain reserves today either have some don't have nothing. And how can you actually supplement in times of security or food security issues that we're having right now? How can you pour food into the economy if we don't have anything in your grain reserve? And more importantly, the state government needs to do more. The state government needs to actually fill in the gap. Currently, right now, like I said, there is no secondary food storage in any of Nigerian states. And that is actually quite concerning. It's borderline irresponsible, to be honest with you, because federal government can only do so much, but the state government has to step up. And I know Lagos State is doing, massive work in food security, but yet the issue of storage begins to loom over not only Lagos, but every other state. You keep asking your question, how can you have scarcity in the midst of abundance? That is what we have going on. Nigeria can produce enough food to feed itself, but inability to store it, that's one part. And then the supply chain that supports the food system is it's subpar. And that's why the need for road accessibility in all this market is a necessity. And you can't put all these things on the federal government alone. The state government and the local government have to step up, because that is where the rubber meets the road. These are one of the quick wins that the government can actually do. And within 6 or 8 months, you can begin to see traction, and food prices will begin to come down. But unless some of these things take shape, food prices will continue to rise.
Right. Mr. Adeleke, some of the feedback, or from the feedback we got from our previous guests, there is also, the concern regarding the middleman policy in Nigeria, especially where food affordability is concerned. And now we're here having this conversation with you essentially on the agricultural sector. And you have spoken in your reports you've shared, that you shared with us in that index report, about a need for subsidies somewhat, and some form of intervention by the governments at state and federal level in this wise. So what are your thoughts on government needing to tighten its monitoring mechanisms? And again, the issue of subsidies, is that really the way to go?
So it's a very dicey situation, and thank you for that question. It's a very dicey situation when you start talking about subsidy, because subsidy has different variations, and depending on which kind of variation you go into it, it really becomes quite economical in odds. It's a lot of mathematics involved in it. So here's my take on it. He spoke passionately about the need to remove, or for government rather to monitor some of these prices. I understand that. But at the same time, government also has to curtail its role in about controlling the market price. Because if on one hand you're saying that we want to actually operate on free market, on the other hand you're also controlling, then which one is which? And that's one of the reasons why some of these things are quite unstable over the course of time. I believe that government intervention is necessary. I believe that government in subsidizing especially energy prices, because that's one of the main reasons why our food processing has really take a hit. Nigerian energy price is probably one of the highest in Africa, and it's extremely difficult to actually participate in the value chain of food if your energy price is very high. So my own take on it after actually aggregating the report is if the government can step in the place of energy price reduction, I think that will go a long way. As you can see, we mentioned the prices of fuel coming back down, because imagine Borno to Lagos. Prior to this festive season, is about 2 million naira in taxes, both illegal and legal taxation. So imagine a 30-ton truck moving from Borno, pushing rice or tomato. From Borno to Lagos, it has to pay 2 million naira in just road taxes. Because once you pass Niger State, every community after Niger State will start taxing you. And either legal or illegal, you just have to pay to be able to move your goods. All these things are where government subsidies or government subsidization, regardless of how you look into it, can actually make sense. Reduction in some of these things will actually reduce a lot of pressure on food price, because there is a lot that goes on. If you ever travel Nigerian roads, go to Nigerian market garages and see how these foods are pushed out, you understand exactly. You understand the journey of food from farm to the table, and you understand it's not an easy one. So government has a lot of role to play. So when I mention subsidy doesn't necessarily mean monetary subsidies. There are ways that government can tighten up their security infrastructure in such a way that all these illegal checkpoints that are on the road will actually ease up, and the prices of food will come down. Legal taxation that is being given in different garages and different communities, all these things, they don't even find their way to the pocket of the government. So I don't even know where some of these associations are getting their fees, but yes, massively they are collecting from truckers, and all these prices going to be passed down to the consumer, you and I, every day. So this is where some areas when I mean by subsidies.
All right, Mr. Adeleke, we've been talking about government at every point and at every level. So where lies the role of the individual to start what we call the home production or the subsistence farming, where they can also grow what they eat? Are you not advocating such for Nigerians?
I am. It's a stopgap, but it cannot solve it all. I grew up during in the 90s when farming was, Nigeria was going through farming at the time. And all of us farm. We all went to farm. We all have tomato beds in the backyard, corn, yams, and that's how we survived the early 90s, the early first part of the 90s. That was pretty much austerity. So I get it. Integrated farming is awesome, but it cannot solve the larger part of the food security issues that we have across the country. It will mitigate it to a large extent, but to be able to solve the problem across board, we have massive agricultural stuff is necessary, and more importantly, the supply chain that goes in there. Of course, integrated farming, a lot of states like Lagos is actually advocating for it, because Lagos doesn't have land to actually plant, so they have to rely on the citizen to actually have the rooftop farming, integrated farming, garden, backyard farming, and all these things are necessary. But that can only feed your family, and some that don't have such farmland. Accessibility to farmlands is another big issue, especially as well. So what do people in Lagos that doesn't have that much big backyard to have to do? But there's a lot of larger issue as well. The rural and urban migration is part of it as well. A lot of people are leaving all these areas. If you go to the southwestern part of Nigeria, there are not enough youth actually out there to actually farm again. So most of those things are most of those backyards are lying fallow rather. So the food security is a wicked problem, very connected in such a way. But ideally, absolutely, I think I mentioned in the report as well that subsistence farming is necessary, but it can only feed so much. You can only eat so much of certain food. And our food system as well, we need to do more research on it. And that's one of the things that we advocated in the report as well. Our food system has changed over the course of time. It's always been tuber and grain-based. Everything happened, give them bag of rice, give them bag of beans, tuber of yams. But our food system has changed over the course of time. I remember growing up in the southwestern part of Nigeria, pap and akara was the staple every morning. Before we go to school, I did it for 12 years. But now, pap and akara is even hard to come by. But the bag of beans, last time I checked, is about 200,000 or 150, depending on where you're getting, price arbitrage. So akara is very hard to get by these days, and corn as well too. So imagine now people are now deviating to other forms of food in the morning. So now Indomie Indomie wasn't around growing up. and now is now part of Nigerian staple. When you look at Nigerian basket of goods that they consume every day, it's different. So we have to actually redefine our food system in a way so that we are producing what we're actually eating. Because that is where there's a dissonance in that as well. People keep giving rice, I get it. It's staple food, it's staple within our community, but a lot of people are not actually, if you go do more research, a lot of people are not eating rice as much as they think again, it affects there's so many things. So this issue of food security is so wicked and so intertwined that we have to take it a step at a time. But for me, my own recommendation right now, to stop the bleeding, because every time when you have a casualty, when you triage a casualty in ER, emergency room, the first thing first is to perform the ABC of sustaining life, which is one of them is to unblock the airways and stop the bleeding. And one of the stopping the bleeding is to provide storage facilities, encourage subsistence and integrated farming, and government subsidies should be encouraged, and not necessarily monetary forms, but in other forms that government can actually muscle their power in making sure that food gets to people at affordable prices.
Right, and what's the prospect for private sector involvement? How is it looking, and what more can be done?
Absolutely. I know a lot of people that have given me feedback on the report said that I did not touch much about the private sector. Private sector has really been the lifesaver, producing whatnot. But private sector has also their profit and loss. They are businesses, so they have shareholders to report to. So their own their own outlook is about making money, and it's completely different from what the government is doing in social stability of the country. So private sector, this particular report actually highlights a lot of opportunities rather than challenges as other people view the report. It encourages private sector to actually look at gaps within the food security ecosystem and look at ways to actually help the government and partner with the government and figure out a way to actually solve the problem. And I believe private sector with this report gives much more opportunity for them to come in and say, you know what, I know there's issues in data gathering. I want to take on this aspect of it, and we can help the government in doing this. I know there's issue in storage. There's no reason why developers across the board can come up to different states and say, you know what, we want to develop 100,000 metric tons of silos, across different states so that we can have food secured. We can move KB State from food insecure to food secure. We can talk about, construction workers, road workers, rail transport workers that want to actually produce. So there's so much the private sector can do. So this report not only talks about the ills of our food security, but also talks about the opportunities therein for private industry to come in. They've done enough massively. They've been able to help and argument where the government is lacking, but much more is needed from them going forward.
Mr. Adeleke, with the allocation on agriculture in the 2025 budget, how optimistic are you that it will help to tackle some challenges developing the food security in the country at this time?
I'll be honest with you, if I can speak freely. I'm optimistic to a certain degree because, like I said, agriculture is only one pillar of food security. It can only solve much. We still are subjected to 60% of post-harvest loss. How do we solve that? It's not that we are not producing in Nigeria. I can tell you by the data that I receive through on a day-to-day basis, Nigeria produces enough to feed itself. We can actually produce enough to feed ourselves currently, but we can't store it, we can't transport it. Then of what use of anything you put in agriculture is going to use? So I understand that the government is, as long as we continue to look at food security from the optics of agricultural production, we are going to fall into the same trap day in, day out. We have to rethink, we have to unlearn, relearn, and learn new ways that agriculture is not food security. It entails so much. So I will encourage that part of the money that is given to agriculture, there's so much money that has been flooded into the agricultural sector over the course of time. 10, 20 years, I can go back, so many interventions. Yes, there is still need for agricultural intervention, don't get me wrong. But other aspects to argument the agricultural sector is necessary. The roads, I want to see much on the roads. Because if food security is tackled, the issue of health security is going to be, we are what we eat. So health is going to feel the impact as well. So Again, agriculture, the budget, and I know it's gonna be an uptick in it, but I don't foresee it taking much stress out of the food security ecosystem. If some of these other issues that we're having, in the food security sector is not being addressed, the agriculture will still continue to grow, but yet others will still continue to be declined. So we'll still be subjected to 60% post-harvest loss, which doesn't help anything, because you can produce all you want, but if you cannot move it from place of scarcity from place of abundance to place of scarcity, we'll continue to have the same issue. We'll be back here at the same time next year singing the same old song.
Right. On a final note, Mr. Adeleke, you've also revealed in your report that yes, famine, food challenges can be a global problem, but we have to face this problem looking at our peculiarities. And you've also advocated for us to build food resilient systems, really, to enhance, food production. Just give us your final thoughts on this, on how this can also bring a breakthrough for food efficiency, food affordability, basically.
Absolutely. I think, thank you for that question. My final thoughts is this. When I started this journey of Nigerian Food Security project, which produces the first Nigerian Food Security Index, there is no data out there to be able to tell the story of the food security in Nigeria. We have to produce that. We use some of the data that is readily available at the global level and also at the federal level and whatnot. But the numbers that we need to be able to capture the true picture of it is not there. So we cannot solve this problem. We cannot have the food resilience. We don't have the data. The data tells the story, and that's what that's what has been lacking. Every day we go into every market in Nigeria to capture the story of what's really going on, and in that story we realize what we are actually posturing today. For us to be food resilient, we have to protect ourselves against shock. Like I always mentioned, Lagos State is doing some tremendous job. The governor of Lagos, Governor Sanwo-Olu, and also the Honorable Commissioner, what they are doing with the Epe Food Logistics Center is massive. But there's still more work to be done for Lagos to be food resilient. In case, if Lagos is cut off from all the states that is piping food into Lagos every day, right, what's going to be the fate of Lagos? Can Lagos still be able to feed itself? That is the question that needs to be resonating with every state governors and every state commissioner of agriculture and food security. How can I feed my state if my state is cut off from everything therein? Thank you for having me.
We appreciate you, Adebayo Adeleke. Thanks a lot for speaking with us, and we hope for more engagement with you. We also hope this document can be shared across all and sundry, especially governments, so as to have, breakthroughs in that sector. Thanks again, Mr. Adeleke, for your time with us.
Thank you so much, man.